In God, your value doesn't come from all you accept, but rather what you reject. In a world of sin, and us who were shaped in sin, the odds seem to be stacked against us. However, if we understand the underlying reason as to why we're here on earth, to serve God, then everything that distracts us from serving God is an element of sin, and thus worthy of removal or separation from. Many believers of God spend their lives convincing their flesh to abstain from lusts that veer their attention away from serving God, instead of confronting the inevitable likelihood of sin and how one could deal with living a less sinful life. According to Scripture, we sin in thought, word, and deed. So understanding how the body perceives informational cues can better help us discern between feelings of the flesh and spiritual awareness. Has someone of the opposite sex that you viewed as attractive ever approached you? How did you feel? The sweaty palms, your heart thudding in your chest, the sudden loss for words. Are you in love? Notice I didn't mention whether or not you're in a committed relationship, because the speed at which life events happen leave past commitments in the back of your mind, while your emotions are playing a more dominant role in the forefront of your mind, initially lessening the weightiness of such commitments, especially after an argument with your partner. But in spite of all that, a closer look on how your body works towards someone you find attractive reveals the role of the hypothalamus in producing dopamine and how it could obstruct logic, hence promoting erratic behavior and irrationality. So there is logic to the madness. But the devil made me do it. Contrary to what many believers believe, in many cases, the devil is not whispering in your ear to do something the Spirit of God is warning you not to do, but rather the flesh. And yes, the flesh has a voice that voices its opinion during many decision processes you'll encounter in life. And the more you feed the flesh, the more prominent the voice will become in your decision-making processes. Besides, the devil cannot be everywhere at the same time. Only God can be. In an attempt to convince our flesh to halt from feelings of sin, many believers have gone to great lengths to engrave God's intent into their body as reminders of their commitment towards serving God. Some believers inflict pain on themselves as a reminder of Christ's sufferings, called self-flagellation. Others opt for tattoos of biblical scripture and Christian symbols over their bodies as an act of shameless love toward God. Does such methods convey our devotion to God? No. In fact, our bodies as being the living temple of God should abstain from such practices. The likelihood that a tattoo is going to persuade one to perform God's will is no different than believing that carrying a cross around your neck will distance the devil's advances. The spiritual warfare we'll encounter doesn't take any of these methods seriously. And while we're on the topic of traditional methods that work seldom, does coaxing our mind with antiquated stories of past failures help us better serve God? No. Many attempts of revisiting past thoughts and actions result in us remembering more of the feelings associated with said sins more than the consequences associated with committing them. Is there a time when the flesh gives up and accepts the lifestyle of Christ? No, never. Which is why we would be given an immortal body to replace our mortal body when we get to heaven.